Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us after lunch and after another session. I know that can be challenging at times, but we really appreciate you being here. We're going to be talking about bridging communities through technology. We have some fabulous panelists who are going to share their perspectives, and I think you'll find that they're each unique and incredibly impactful. With that, I would like to introduce our speakers. We have Bashir Bseirani, CEO of Avertra. We have Brad Chadwell, the Director of Enterprise Research and Innovation at TVA. Amy Atchley, Senior Lead, EV Equity Program for Austin Energy, and Brad Hall, the VP of External Affairs, AEP. Can we give them a little round of applause before we get started? Yeah. Okay, excellent. So I've been asking this question pretty much all week, but I think it's really important that we find out who these people are as themselves before we find out who they are as professionals. And so I would love it if Brad, at the end, would kick us off with what energizes you.
Energizes me. With TVA, it really is, it's our mission to serve. So the Tennessee Valley Authority was created expressly by an act of Congress, no less, to serve the people of the Tennessee Valley. And so when I first was interviewing in position, I've been there for about 4 or 5 months. I'm still learning everything. But everyone talked about service and serving the people. And it was at first like, oh, that's just a slogan. That's just a kind of a marketing brand. But every single person at TVA really lives that, serving the people of the Valley. I think that really fits well. I'm happy to be here on this particular panel today talking about not just digital, but how that impacts customers and people.
Amazing. Thank you. And Amy?
Yeah, so I am the Senior Lead for the EV Equity Program at Austin Energy, and my role is very embedded, working hands-on projects with the community. And for me, it really is that human connection, that humanity coming together on these projects, ensuring that everybody is getting a shot at these transformations that are happening. So really energizes me to be out in the community and just working with everyday people.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, go for it, Brad.
Sure. I'll try not to give you too long of an answer, but a lot of the work that I do I'm very passionate about, and the reason is I work for our AEP's Appalachian Power territory, which is in very rural West Virginia, and East Tennessee. And one thing that we've really tried to do is help our communities grow, because there's, a shrinking utility isn't good for anyone. And I'm from East Kentucky, very similar territories. It's a very mountainous region. And one thing that you think about, there's still a real urban-rural divide, and that's in broadband. And we have put together a very creative program that is taking high-speed fiber out into these territories and bringing gigabit speeds to customers that had zero speeds prior to these projects. And being able to create this opportunity for these rural customers, of which I am one and have been most of my entire life, bringing these opportunities to grow, retain industry, and bring other solutions to these customers has been extremely rewarding for me, and so it absolutely energizes me every day.
Thank you. And Bashir?
Awesome. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bashir Bseirani. I'm the CEO and CTO at a small company called Avertra, where our mission statement is to simplify life. 2 words, right? It's all that's needed. And that is what energizes me, makes me wake up every day, as well as our team, where we understand that we live in a very complicated, I think I'm loud enough where y'all can hear me anyways. So we live in a very complicated and complex world, right? Our customers are all very highly regulated industries that are customer-centric. And we look at our life as well, too, as individuals and humans, and realize that there's just complexity everywhere. And a lot of people are afraid of that. So we look at ourselves as a group of people that have the courage to step in where there's fire and to actually help calm things down and to make something that's very complicated look really easy.
Great. Thank you so much. So before we really get into sort of like the community perspective, I think it's important that we kind of define digital transformation because it's a little different for everyone in the room. So Amy, would you kind of kick us off with that?
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. It's a very broadly used term, and it gets kind of confusing. But for me, essentially, and for the work that I'm doing at the utility and in the EV space, it really is this fundamental shift in how we operate. And that has everything to do with how we're getting around, how we're transitioning into electric vehicles, all the way into how we are doing remote learning, how we're using telehealth now, how we are having, online school for kids, how we are doing remote learning. It's just a complete shift in how we have conducted our lives. So that's pretty much, I think, my definition of digital transition.
Great. Thank you so much. And Brad?
This Brad?
Yeah, this Brad.
We had two Brads. It was complicated up here. So digital transformation for us is really, I spoke about the broadband project. It's bringing this opportunity to folks that can utilize some of our digital transformation opportunities that don't have connectivity now. In fact, some of our regions don't even have mobile service or cellular service. And so figuring out how can these customers benefit from reliability opportunities in digitization. When you talk about smart meters, you talk about smart circuits. We've got areas that you can't even communicate with a smart circuit if you put it out there. And so we've got to create these opportunities through projects like our broadband projects. And so we think about how we're deploying technology to improve reliability for customers. Being in an area that's, West Virginia is the third most forested state in the United States, and that creates challenges. And when you think about the terrain, reliability is really key to us in making sure we're utilizing the new technology to create reliability products and opportunities for customers. And then customer education, educating customers on the opportunities we're bringing them. We serve very rural customers, some that don't have connectivity, some that refuse to use connectivity. And so how do you help educate those customers to take advantage of the opportunities we're bringing through technology?
Great. Thank you so much. And Bashir.
Yeah, so digital transformation, as a consulting and software company, right, we look at digital transformation through the eyes of our customers, and they all look at it very differently. So some digital transformations are very purpose-driven, where they're trying to, for example, improve their J.D. Power scores in different areas, and they're trying to take something that had a lot of human touch and want to add more technology around it. Digital transformation could also mean adding new lines of business or creating net new types of services and experiences for your customers that you didn't have before, and you're trying to take advantage of technology to be able to help you expand and connect and extend your reach to customers and segments of the market that you might have spoken to before. So we really take everything with an objective-based and purpose-based approach, right? So we start with our customers by defining the value of why they're actually doing this, right? This is very early on when putting together their business case. And then help them define goals, sets of personas that these goals actually are going to be impacting, and what are all the initiatives that we need to do as part of that. Some of it's process reengineering, some of it is systems transformation, some of it is process definition, right? So it's a pretty broad spectrum, but at the end of the day, it all has to be purpose-driven, and there always has to be a value for it.
Great, thank you. Now that we've kind of set up the stage for the actual meat and potatoes conversation, and before we dive in, I want you all to be thinking about questions to ask our panelists, because we will have plenty of time to ask them questions, and I will call on you if you raise your hand. I won't pick on you, I promise. But really, we're talking about bridging into communities, right? And at the heart of that is the people. So how do we build a human-centric approach to digital transformation? Brad?
Sure. And part of one of the things in defining digital, think of it very broadly. It's where information and energy are flowing along the same paths. So it really opens up a new way. You're not just consuming information, but opens up opportunities to interact, to participate in energy. And this is where this opens up the possibility for all the energy services that we talk about and the ways of doing that. And really the customer is at the heart of that. So the customer is no longer is the equivalent of turning on your water faucet with electricity or plugging something in. But you can interact with that. You can control when you use it, how you use it, what you're paying for it. And it also goes hand in hand with the synergies with communication. So in order for information to flow, you have to have connectivity. And so not just so, a lot of times there's a really good synergy with the utilities being able to provide the bandwidth for information flow to allow us to build all these additional energy services, but also to use that same fiber, those same technologies to provide communications as well, so to connect communities. And that's really where it comes in. It's all about connection and participation. So that has to start with the customer.
Thank you so much. And I guess before we move on, because I did skip you and I apologize,
No.
and thank you for not holding it against me.
That was the first part of my answer, so that was
Good. How would you kind of approach that then? If we need to put them in the middle or the forefront of the conversation, how would you suggest utilities or service providers do that?
Take the same advice that is given to every technology startup or someone that wants to start a business. Go talk to your customer. Before you have, I get this really cool product, go put it in front of 50 customers. Did they like it? Go talk to 50 more. And just keep doing that until you know exactly what the customer needs.
Great, thank you. And I think that sets things up nicely for you, Amy.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think it really is important that we're using the voice of the people to design our programs. We absolutely have to have that influence, because what happens quite often when we go in and deploy technologies is that the same communities and the same people are left out of the conversation. Usually it's the most vulnerable in our communities. And so if we're not taking that feedback, if we're not collaborating and co-designing with our community, then we're designing things that are really not wanted and not needed. And so people will be continued to be left out and not have that sense of belonging in these new technologies. And I'll give you an example of something we've done at Austin Energy that has been very impactful, and it's really driven our entire model for how we're proceeding with transportation electrification in the city of Austin. And it is our Austin Climate Equity Plan. And the way that we designed this program is we didn't just work with energy experts. We didn't just work with city experts. We worked with everyday people. We brought in community-based organizations to come in and chime in and tell us what they wanted and needed. We brought everyday people. And so now we have this plan that's co-collaborated with the community, with the experts, with the industry, and we're all on the same page. And what happened in that conversation is that the community brought up these pain points that we were unaware of because we're not living that experience. We don't know exactly the needs of the community. We may think we do. We may think we have all the solutions, but the last thing that you want to do is deploy programs that don't have that human-centered approach.
Great, thank you. Brad?
Well, I think the heart of the human-centric approach is really about customer satisfaction. And, you know, we as an industry were probably slow to adopt some very pro-customer things that other industries had been doing for quite some time. And so our customers have grown impatient with us for not catching up. And now many of us are catching up, but also we have to hear the customer and speak to them where they want to be heard. And that's been a real challenge for us because as an industry, we haven't really done that in the past. And so focusing and truly focusing on customer satisfaction, communicating with them in the channels where they want to be heard is really important. And keeping that on the human approach. I mean, I think about social media. We developed a social media center because traffic and social media was getting, you know, pretty extreme. And of course, you can get some really bad responses in social media, but our social media center responds to every response. And if you read and you watch this traffic, the valuable feedback you get from your customers is unbelievable. But for us to have someone responding to that customer, even when they're just beating us up in social media, but then going back and say, direct message me your information and I'll help you with your problem. And how we turn that around to a solution for that customer and hearing their needs has been really, really monumental, I think, for our company. So I think the heart of being human-centric is customer satisfaction. You know, if we're not listening to the customer, delivering what they need, allowing them to have the tools to control how they use our product, then we're not really thinking about the customer in the way that we should be.
Great, thank you. And Bashir?
Yeah, I would agree. A lot of this kind of also drives into how utilities think of segmentation, right? So it's great to survey, but sometimes as customers, we get exhausted from that. Right. So how to use the data that you have, that you're generating and you're creating on a daily basis across all the different tools and systems that you have, and how can the data tell you a story that you don't even know how to ask the question about, right? So I think that's another important thing that most utilities don't even understand how to even start initiatives like this. Bringing in folks who are behavior scientists, right, to tell you what if a customer, after receiving their your bill is ready notification, logged in 16 times before paying it. What does that tell you about them? Right? They're concerned. They might not be part of your survey group, but you might probably have 25% of your customer base who actually does that, right? So what are you doing to actually segment those and start putting out direct campaigns to hear from those customers, right? So picking who your customer group is that you're going to be talking to, right, is also a challenge. How do you determine what are the right parameters to be able to pick the right group based on the goal and the objective that you're trying to really achieve? Right, so I think that becomes it's a shift, right? So utilities are going from utility companies to marketing companies, right? And they have to think very, 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 very differently, right? And it can't be just we're pipes and lines and we're a monopoly and customers can't go anywhere and they're stuck with us forever, because that's the mindset that's going to make customers leave, right? You know, we're working with Puget Sound Energy on, you know, determining what low income means. That should be an easy question to answer, right? But with COVID and with rates increasing because of fuel charge differences, what's the new definition of low income, right? So we had to help them put together new data information that 5 years ago, certain customers would never be considered low income, but now they are. And they're way beyond the poverty line from an income level, right? But it's because their seasonality of their income. Like, for example, they're a very fishing-centric and crabbing-centric society out there. There are folks that only make money 3 months out of the year, and they don't make money the rest of the year. So how do you put for them a budget billing program that makes them pay fees throughout a year when they don't have money? They can pay you the entire year up front in that 3-month period and have a settlement on a 1-year basis. But the programs don't allow for that, right? But the data that now they're starting to collect and we're starting to analyze with them is really shining new light on who the customer is, right? And it's opening their eyes, and they're investing big time now in their low-income programs and customer aid programs because they're realizing with all these new rate increases, a lot of more people need help than they thought they would.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody have anything to add to that?
I'll just add, I think some of the things I'm hearing you talk about, Bashir, is really interesting, and it has a lot to do with equity, and I think that we need to really be thinking about that. And I think one of the biggest challenges, you hear that term a lot, what does equity mean? And we have to get on the same page with what equity means. And so what we're doing in Austin is we have an equity office that has come up with that definition, and so that we're all working together, we utilize that as the base, and that's ground zero. And so we're able to work from the bottom up now, instead of the top down, serving people equitably. And I think it's just really essential. And I like, again, Bashir, some of the very custom things you're doing with some of the, the crabbers and the fishers. Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. That's very specific. We don't necessarily have that in Austin. So, you really do have to dive in, and you have to get to know that customer, and you also have to show up. So, and what that means is you have to integrate with these communities, and it's not just an email marketing campaign. It's not just social media as well. It's really going out into the community, going to community events, going to the schools. We have a program called EVs for Schools, which is where we're deploying electric vehicle charging with curriculum at our Title I schools right here in Austin. And Title I is where students are getting free and reduced lunches. And so we know that the schools are the heart of the community. And so we're going and working with these young students. The schools are now becoming a place, a hub for parents to learn as well, along with their kids, about EVs. And the kids are tugging on their parents, why aren't we driving an EV? And it becomes this circular education piece. That program that started out in 4 schools is now across Central Texas in 140 schools. We've got over 800 teachers teaching the curriculum. But it really is this dialogue and coming, as you said, coming to, I think that was what you said, Brad, is meeting the customer where they are.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, cool. Well, and that was fantastic. So thank you for that, all of you. There are unique challenges, though, when you are taking a human-centric approach to digital transformation, because they're not conflicting ideas, but they're very different aspects of the same solution or same effort. So what are some of those unique challenges? Brad, would you like to start?
Sure. I think I'll talk about some of the unique challenges we've seen in the project that we've really focused on, and that's our broadband deployment project. And that is, we've really leveraged our relationship with the customers in these regions to bring forth a very long challenge that these communities have had of getting broadband internet service. Economic development is in my umbrella, and we work really closely with our communities, but we had sites that didn't have access to high-speed internet service, that couldn't attract and retain industry. And so we worked very closely with these communities to help us bring forth legislative change that had to happen so we could build out fiber infrastructure, because you're building a piece of infrastructure you're not going to use for the purpose of electricity. So it was actually illegal for us to build excess capacity of fiber without law change. And then you had to get your regulators on board to make this happen. And so Grayson County, Virginia was the first place we did this. 6,000 customers had 0 speeds when it comes to internet service. Half of the fire departments in this county did not have connectivity. This was a real challenge. In the pandemic, they had to stay in school because they couldn't learn from home. They had no way to connect. And we helped create a solution for them, and actually our communities would come and testify in the legislature on behalf of our law, testify at the Public Service Commission on behalf of regulatory approvals that we needed to build out this program. We're now doing this across 2 states, building 2,000 miles of fiber, and we're going to bring gigabit level speeds to 67,000 customers that have 0 level speeds today. So, we went to the customer, we heard what they needed, we saw a challenge. We have the most infrastructure to all the customers than any other utility. Why not leverage that to create a solution for broadband? And that's what we did.
Thank you. Brad?
Sure. And a lot of it's recognizing being able to put yourself in the customer's shoes and recognizing their lens, their perspective, and not trying to explain customers. If my lights go out, I just want to know when they're coming back on. I don't need to know about interstate congestion and temperature transmitters that are failing or any other engineering approach. I'm an engineer, so I can say that, self-deprecating. But it's coming back to understanding what the customers want and need, and and humans are not rational. We're just emotional beings, and so it's an emotional response. If your power goes out, your life has changed, and you're going through that whole experience in anger and dismay and betrayal, and like, oh, but if I get a text message, my phone's still working, it says, oh, we know your power's out. Okay, good, and it's coming back on, and just like if you go to a restaurant and you reserve a table and say it's going to be an hour and a half, and 20 minutes later they go, it's come back. You're happy because it was much sooner. You're not going to get mad if it comes back on sooner than it was. And so if you say, if you put a time up there, and if it's going to be days, say it's days. But if it comes back on sooner there, people just don't like uncertainty. It's the fear of the unknown from a customer perspective really gets them. So I think that's a lot of us have learned, speaking as a utility industry, just over the various storms that have gone through various parts of the country. You can't over-communicate. People expect perfect information instantaneously, always updated, without asking. It should just be always pushed to their devices. I think there's a lot of just putting the customer first is not just saying, how can I help them serve better, but how can I help them, what information can I provide them? It goes back to that information flow that really starts the whole digital transformation.
Great. Thank you. Bashir?
Yeah, so... Okay. All right, so I'm going to answer it from a few different perspectives, right? So coming in, working with a lot of utilities, I think the first thing to make it successful, or digital transformation successful with positive impact, is alignment at an executive level, right? Where your chief customer officer and your CEO and CFO actually agree on what it takes to make this happen, right? Because this is a never-ending cycle. It's not like, hey, just 18 months and then you stop. Right, this is a real investment that utilities are making to actually take this and redefine who they are as part of this journey, right? The next thing I would say is real clear communication with your customer. Letting them know, so change management is so critical, right? Letting them know when it's coming, how it's coming, why it's coming, and then being able to measure what you actually pushed out properly and be able to put together a refinement model. And actually having an agile mindset, I think, is really critical, right? I've been working with so many utilities that they wait for literally everything to be done before they push something out and measure to see if there's value, right? So taking things into smaller pieces, chunking up your programs, pushing things out quickly to your customer to be able to show them that you're actually listening to them and not telling them for 2 years that you're going to be delivering a customer portal, as an example, right? We've been working with the Navajo Nation right now for around 18 months to deploy the first customer-facing digital platform that the Navajo Nation has ever had. And that's actually been a really cool exercise to hear stories from people that, see, they actually had internet, but they had no place to pay or log in to understand or start service, right? Because their systems were just pretty old and everything was manual, so they decided to actually just turn those services off, right? So people would actually have to drive an hour and a half to the closest store to be able to pay their bill, right? So then if you're sick and you can't make it and you have nobody to help you, well, they're going to come turn off your lights because they implemented AMI. And they have systems that just say, delinquent, off. Right? So now they're realizing that they have to change a lot internally, and now that we're starting to give them a mechanism to connect to their customers in a way that they couldn't before, because before it was only physical, right? So now they are going to start learning a lot more about who their customers are and what are they actually into and interested in, to start building out custom programs for them to start rolling out slowly but surely and creating a much more delightful experience for their customer base.
Thank you. Amy?
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear on this panel that this common theme is the digital divide, right? So I don't even know that we can have this conversation without thinking about that, because if everyone can't, if they don't have one of these, if they don't have broadband,
Sure.
how can they participate in this new world? How does that work? So I think we really need to think hard about how are we going to provide that access? How are we going to enable this communication, this new way of communicating? One of the things that we did in Austin during the pandemic was we had a bunch of school buses that were not being utilized. And so what we ended up doing is taking those buses and putting them in our affordable housing areas during school hours. So young students, they each every student in Austin Independent School District got a laptop, and they were able to get online because we repurposed that unutilized bus. So I think we need to get creative in how we're addressing these things. And I think the other thing that is just super important that we need to think about, and I think about this a lot when I'm talking with communities that don't even really know what an EV is. And if I say, well, do you know what an electric car is? It starts tuning in a little bit. It really is a barrier of a behavior shift. No one likes change. And so how do we bridge this? And the way that you do it really is, again, getting in the community, talking with the customer. It's also, like marketing outreach. I have other organizations say, what is the most important thing you can do? It's education, marketing, and outreach. And it really is getting out there and helping people have this become a part of their language and letting them tell us what they need.
Great, thank you. So how do you envision engagement of the future? I want to be a little aspirational before we open it up for questions. So Amy, what do you think?
Okay, wait, let me think about this. Engagement. Well, I mean, I think what I'm seeing, I guess I would probably say a lot of what I just said. I mean, I think as we are heading into digital, we need more of this. We need more of us together. We need people. We need real interaction, because I think humans tend to get lost in the technology.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, we can clap for that. Brad?
Just more. We just need more communication, making use of all the channels. As Bashir said, it's not sending out surveys because everyone gets weary and just starts checking different things. Just extremely. If I get how satisfied are you 0 to 10? The first one I'll actually give it a real answer. The third or fourth, I just start putting zeros and sending it back and seeing how it comes out. Yeah, I'm just that way. I'm emotional.
Some of us can.
But it's making use of those channels. Everyone. So if you have different accounts in the various social media platforms that people are coming in, mine those for keywords. Make use of all the AI and machine learning, other technologies that we've talked about in other panels here this week. Make use of those. Set up different forums with different stakeholders. So it's not just customers. It's working with local governments, with civic community groups, with chambers of commerce, with labor unions, with TVA's case, so we are only generation and transmission. We set up many interactions with our local power companies. We have 153 municipalities and co-ops that actually have the customers. So we always have to ask about our customer's customer and how we're working there. So it's setting up different forums so how are we going to build the energy system of the future? How are we going to deal with the complexity that we've talked about in the many sessions here? And so it's as many channels as you can possibly get and just intake all the information and then do something about it. That was it.
I didn't want to cut you off. Sorry. It's close to the end of the day, guys. Bashir.
Oh, sure. Well, a few things. One, I would say you have to have a real solid omni-channel data collection strategy. Pretty technical, I know. Right, but you do. Your systems can tell you a lot more about what's going on in your business than your employees. It's the reality of it, right? So putting together that type of data strategy and be able to collect what has what objective, hyper-personalized communication, right? KYC, know your customer, right? Being able to know who I am, understanding how I use the services that you're providing to me, understanding my behavior, understanding utilities can tell you if you're depressed. How, right? That's funny. You know when I'm awake. You know when my lights are on. If I'm consistently awake between 12:30 and 3:30 in the morning, what does that tell you about me? Right? I might have problems. I might need help. Right? I don't know. Right? So use your data. Bring in scientists. Bring in people who are, yeah, it's pretty funny, but it's true. You guys have more data about us than anybody else in this country. It's very true. Right? So how are you going to use that to create a hyper-personalized experience for me so I don't have to talk to you?